Hello, Sharon.
Rhonda, it's so good to see you.
It's wonderful to see you. So my name is Rhonda Magee. I am a law professor. I sometimes say a law professor by day, but I also teach and study and teach mindfulness meditation with a particular focus on ways of offering these practices to support us in, well, just bearing up with the challenges of being human in a world in which social identity can play such an important role in our outcomes, our experiences, our opportunities to thrive or not. And so I'm so honored to be talking to you today, Sharon, because your work has really always been an inspiration to me insofar as you focus not only on loving kindness and ways that we can enhance and cultivate a sense of care and concern that extends beyond ourselves and beyond our tribes to others, but you've really been, for me, a kind of a model of that kind of courageous teacher who is really speaking to the power of these practices for social engagement. In your current book is just another wonderful example of that.
Well, thank you so much. I'm Sharon Salzberg, and I'm a meditation teacher and author. I've been teaching meditation since the beginning of time, or as a friend said before, it was cool, since 1974, both mindfulness practice and loving kindness practice. And my most recent book is called Real Change, Mindfulness to Heal Ourselves in the World. And I had a great opportunity of adapting one of the meditations from Rhonda's new book, which I want her to also mention before we go on to the topic.
Well, my book is called, thank you so much, Sharon, so kind, The Inner Work of Racial Justice. And the subtitle is Healing Ourselves and Transforming Our Communities Through Mindfulness. So yes, it's thank you. And it's an honor to, again, like be in this place of collaboration, bringing our practices and some of the ways we've been adapting practice of longstanding deep wisdom, but offering them in ways that we hope resonates in these times.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, maybe I'll start just by saying I've really been pondering what inner peace is. And interestingly enough, I just received an email from somebody who had asked me a question years ago when I had gone down to Florida to the Parkland community, where, of course, there had been terrible school shooting. And she is a young woman whose mother is a teacher at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas School and was not injured that day, but it was a horrific tragedy. And I went down and taught a mindfulness retreat, and in the course of that, she raised her hand and she said to me, I feel really weird because this is a tremendous and wonderful experience. And I know the only reason it's happening is because that terrible thing happened. And I don't know how to get over it to really enjoy this. And I said, I don't know that we ever get over it, but we learn to hold it all together. And we call that equanimity within the Buddhist tradition. And so I think about that as a sign of inner peace, because we can hear the term inner peace and think of something kind of flat,
Yeah.
without any, texture and contours. But I think it's really being able to hold everything. It's like the
Yeah.
sorrow and the joy,
Yeah.
and it's the loss and the sense of possibility.
Yeah.
It's sort of the devastation that's going on and new beginnings at the
Mm-hmm.
same time. And I think about that in terms of society and how it manifests, where we need to be able to face the suffering, say, of bias and inequality and so many things. I mean, the list just goes on, directly and honestly and openly. But we also need a sense of possibility. It's like if we only are with the suffering, if we can't see just that glimmer of what might be, then we become despairing.
Yeah.
And if we're only in what's possible and we're kind of, floating above the really terrible pain that so many people are experiencing, then we're completely ungrounded and it's just not real. And so somehow holding them both and being able to acknowledge both and be fully with both is what I would think of as inner peace.
Yeah, that's so beautifully put. And, kind of there's a kind of an image that comes to mind for me of like, sort of expansion and a kind of a feeling too, a feeling that comes up for me when I think of the way you're inviting us to kind of imagine, if you will, how mindfulness supports us in um, really being with these disparate aspects of our experience. I think of, equanimity as that capacity to hold more of reality and bear up against the difficulty of seeing the parts of reality that we might be tempted to turn away from, the parts that are less to our liking, maybe inviting more of the inner critic to come up, maybe even inviting more of the sense of where we are wounded that we don't want to acknowledge and we don't want to recognize as a part of our reality. I do think that mindfulness meditation for me has helped me hold like multiple complex realities, like the realities around, yes, these sorts of things are happening in the world. They have happened to me. They may not be happening right now, but what is time when it comes to these kinds of traumas? And at the very same time, I am, you know, in a certain sense, gifted, as I think actually all human beings are, with life, with these precious opportunities to literally feel, not an abstraction, not an idea, literally feel alive and a part of this unpredictable moment that we're in. Um, so I do, for me, it's this challenge. Mindfulness can help me with holding those differentiated realities. And the inner peace piece, I sometimes feel that, I think of this phrase, the ground and the groundlessness. But yeah, this like how for me, practice, whether it's sitting meditation or a movement practice, if I'm able to kind of feel a sense of my own being present on the earth and have the presence of mind to remember that I'm not alone, which I know as well you've written about so beautifully, as well as being kind of a way of holding the trauma of all of this. We've suffered as human beings, not just us in our own lives, but the thread of humanity has suffered in so many different ways. And so when we're having a particular moment where we're feeling the pain of our own, it does so help to remember that we're not alone. And for me, that includes, yes, the vast and incomprehensible scope of human suffering and interrelatedness, but also the ground, the literal earth, the air, like the more than human world, if you will. That is also a solace to me and a source of peace.
Well, it's really quite incredible because I think interconnection can be seen as the truth of things, and the heart's response to that is loving kindness or compassion, which can easily be confused and often is confused with being weak or passive or giving in or excessively sentimental, something
Yeah.
like that. But I think those things, love and compassion, are really tremendous powers precisely because they're based in the truth of how things are. That
Yeah.
however alone we might feel or cut off or divided, actually our lives are intertwined. And one of my favorite things to do in going into an organization or a company to teach would be to say to people, how many other people need to be doing their job well for you to be able to do your job well?
Yeah.
Because guess what? You may think you're, supreme, but in fact, we are dependent on a lot of people and they are depending on us. It's really like a network, a
Radically.
system.
Mm-hmm.
And recently I was talking to a doctor, the head of a medical practice in a hospital, And he said to me, you know who I have an increased appreciation for is the cleaning staff.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, oh, yeah, look at that. Who
Yeah.
are we counting on? Who are we needing so badly? And often the kind of person we usually overlook or look through or discount. So, what about taking a moment and kind of lifting them into our consciousness and saying, yes, we are really intertwined. That's the nature of things.
Exactly. Well, and again, I so appreciate and love your work because you are constantly inviting us to come back in a way that deeply resonates with what I feel like is my own kind of calling and way into teaching and practice, but into that kind of the practicality of what it's like to kind of practice for expanding the capacity of the heart to hold, yes, our own suffering, but also our love for each other, our care and concern that goes beyond our own limited experience and reaches out to encompass, well, those we might be tempted to think of as our enemies, those we might be tempted to think of as people of a different tribe. So, yeah, the practices that help us cultivate this sense that we are interconnected, I think are so important to helping us kind of be in right relationship to the challenges of our time. And I also, and I love that you said that, there's this sense of truth around interconnectedness. That's the truth of the heart. And I'm also aware that in my experience, people are afraid sometimes when we talk about interconnectedness and when we are disconnected from whatever it is that might give us solace. So is there any way in which you offer, Sharon, you would offer to folks who are listening support for being able to navigate what might be anxiety that comes up when they think about interconnectedness or fear?
First, I want to say how much I admire your work. And I think because you actually hit that precise point from the first time I ever heard you speak, I thought you were incredible and bringing together things, elements that are hard to hold all together. It's like sitting in the midst of paradox or ambivalence, which is also true, and having a big enough mind and heart to be able to hold it all. And the particular kind of elements I was thinking of are, first of all, the moral reckoning of
Yeah.
somebody who is in a place perhaps of greater privilege or leadership or dominance in some way. And to be able to see in truth and all humility one's own bias or indifference to others, whatever it might be. But at the same time, you said it earlier, not just spiraling out into kind of this well of the inner critic or ultimate shame. Like I was in California for the month of February, which I often refer to as almost like a magical thing, like I was somewhere else besides here. I took a journey. Wow. And I was doing a presentation, and someone in the room was a psychologist, and she said, the brain filled with shame cannot learn. And I thought that was very interesting because what we want, what we need so desperately is learning.
Oh, yeah.
We need to grow and change, and to be able to hold that kind of unveiling at the same time as holding compassion for oneself rather than just being overwhelmed with shame and therefore not learning.
So true.
I think you do it brilliantly, and
Thank you.
it's a wonderful
But
ability.
this thing about compassion for the self. So we have to wrap up here because we just have to wrap up here. But of course, we could talk forever. And I just want to offer this moment of just awareness and invitation to all those who are listening. Begin with compassion for ourselves. We have all suffered, but we've suffered enough. So if we can find ways of bringing love and kindness and compassion to ourselves, from there we can extend it to this beautiful interconnected human family and on this beautiful earth that we're privileged, even in these difficult moments, to live on together. So thank you, Sharon. It's been a
Oh,
pleasure.
thank you so much.
You too.